Preface to the Letters of Jane Austen. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. Recording by Elizabeth Klett. The Letters of Jane Austen, selected from the compilation of her great-nephew, Edward Lord Brabourne, by Sarah Chauncey Woolsey. Preface. The recent cult for Miss Austen, which has resulted in no less than 10 new editions of her novels within a decade, and 3 memoirs by different hands within as many years, have made the facts of her life familiar to most readers. It was a short life, and an uneventful one as viewed from the standpoint of our modern times, when steam and electricity have linked together the ends of the earth, and the very air seems teeming with news, agitations, discussions. We have barely time to recover our breath between post and post, and the morning paper with its statements of disaster and its hints of still greater evils to be is scarcely outlived, when lo, in comes the evening issue, contradicting the news of the morning to be sure, but full of omens and auguries of its own to strew our pillows with the seed of wakefulness. To us publications come hot and hot from the press. Telegraphic wires, like the intricate and incalculable zigzags of the lightning, ramify above our heads. And who can tell at what moment their darts may strike? In Miss Austen's day, the tranquil, drowsy, decorous English day of a century since, all was different. News travelled then from hand to hand, carried in creaking post-wagons, or in cases of extreme urgency by men on horseback. When a gentleman journeying in his own chaise took 3 days in going from Exeter to London, a distance now covered in 3 hours of railroad, there was little chance of frequent surprises. Love, sorrow, and death were in the world then as now, and worked their will upon the sons of men, but people did not expect happenings every day, or even every year. No doubt they lived the longer for this exemption from excitement, and kept their nerves in a state of wholesome repair, but it goes without saying that the events of which they knew so little did not stir them deeply. Miss Austen's life coincided with 2 of the most momentous epochs of history, the American struggle for independence and the French Revolution. But there is scarcely an allusion to either in her letters. She was interested in the fleet and its victories because 2 of her brothers were in the navy, and had promotion and prize money to look forward to. In this connection she mentions Trafalgar and the Egyptian expedition, and generously remarks that she would read Southey's Life of Nelson if there was anything in it about her brother Frank. She honours Sir John Moore by remarking after his death that if his mother would perhaps have preferred to have him less distinguished and still alive. Further than that, the making of the gooseberry jam and a good recipe for orange wine interests her more than all the marchings and countermarchings, the manoeuvres and diplomacies going on the world over. In the midst of the universal vortex of fear and hope, triumph and defeat, while the fate of Britain and British liberty hung trembling in the balance, she sits writing her letters, trimming her caps, and discussing small beer with her sister in a lively and unruffled fashion wonderful to contemplate. The society of rural England in those days, as Mr. Goldwin Smith happily puts it, enjoyed a calm of its own in the midst of the European tempest, like the windless centre of a circular storm. The point of view of a woman with such an environment must naturally be circumscribed and narrow, and in this Miss Austen's charm consists. Seeing little, she painted what she saw with an absolute fidelity, and a dexterity and perfection unequalled. On her was bestowed, though in a humble form, the gift which had been bestowed on Homer, Shakespeare, Cervantes, Scott, and a few others, the gift of creative power. Endowed with the keenest and most delicate insight and a vivid sense of humour, she depicted with exactitude what she observed and what she understood, giving to each fact and emotion its precise shade and value. The things she did not see she did not attempt. Affectation was impossible to her, most of all affectation of knowledge or feeling not justly her own. She held the mirror up to her time with an exquisite sincerity and fidelity, and the closeness of her study brought her intimately near to those hidden springs which underlie all human nature. This is the reason why, for all their skimp skirts, leg-a-mutton sleeves, and bygone impossible bonnets, her characters do not seem to us old-fashioned. Minds and hearts are made pretty much after the same pattern from century to century, and given a modern dress and speech, Emma or Elizabeth, or dear Anne Elliot, could enter a drawing-room to-day, and excite no surprise except by so closely resembling the people whom they would find there. Miss Austen's novels are dateless things, Mr. Augustine Birrell tells us. Nobody in his senses would speak of them as old novels. John Inglesant is an old novel, so is Ginx's Baby. But Emma is quite new, and, like a wise woman, affords few clues to her age. We allude with a special touch of affection to Anne Elliot. Persuasion, which was written during the last 2 years of Miss Austen's life, when the refining touch of eternity was already upon her, has always seemed to us the most perfect of her novels, and Anne, with her exquisite breeding and unselfish straightforwardness, just touched with the tender reserve of memory and regret, one of her best portraitures. But this is a matter of individual taste. Doubtless Elizabeth Bennet is better fun, as the modern girl would say. Miss Austen herself preferred her. She had a droll and pretty way of talking about her characters, which showed how real they were to her own mind, and made them equally real to other people. In 1813 she had the good luck to light upon a portrait of Jane Bennet at an exhibition. "I was very well pleased, pray tell Fanny, with a small portrait of Mrs. Bingley, excessively like her. I went in hopes of seeing one of her sister, but there was no Mrs. Darcy. Perhaps I may find her in the great exhibition, which we shall go to if we have time. Mrs. Bingley's is exactly like herself, size, shaped face, features, and sweetness. There never was a greater likeness. She is dressed in a white gown with green ornaments, which convinces me of what I had always supposed, that green was a favourite colour with her. I dare say Mrs. D. will be in yellow." And later: "We have been both to the exhibition and Sir J. Reynolds's, and I am disappointed, for there was nothing like Mrs. D. at either. I can only imagine that Mr. D. prizes any picture of her too much to like it should it be exposed to the public eye. I can imagine he would have that sort of feeling, that mixture of love, pride, and delicacy." The letters included in this series comprise about 3/4 of the collection in 2 volumes published in 1884 by her great-nephew, Lord Brabourne. The lightness, almost friskiness of their tone cannot fail to strike the reader. Modern letters written by women are filled more or less with hints and queries. Questionings as to the why and the wherefore occur, allusions to the various fads of the day, literary or artistic, Ibsen, Tolstoy, Browning, esoteric Buddhism, Wagner's music, the mind cure, social science, causes and reforms. But Cowper and Crabbe were the poetical sensations in Miss Austen's time, Scott and Byron its phenomenal novelties. It took months to get most books printed, and years to persuade anybody to read them. Furthermore, the letters, in all probability, are carefully chosen to reveal only the more superficial side of their writer. There are wide gaps of omission, covering important events such as Mr. Austen's death, the long illness through which Jane nursed her brother Henry, and the anxieties and worries which his failure in business caused to the whole family. What is vouchsafed us is a glimpse of the girlish and untroubled moments of Miss Austen's life, and the glimpse is a sweet and friendly one. We are glad to have it, in spite of our suspicion that another and even more interesting part of her personality is withheld from us. A good daughter, a delightful sister, the most perfect of aunts. What better record could there be of a single woman? Her literary work never stood in the way of her home duties, any more than her quiet, limpid, unimpassioned style stood between her thought and her readers. Her fame may justly be said to be almost entirely posthumous. She was read and praised to a moderate degree during her lifetime, but all her novels together brought her no more than £700, and her reputation, as it were, was in its close-sheathed bud, when at the early age of 41 she died. It would have excited in her an amused incredulity, no doubt, had any one predicted that 2 generations after her death the real recognition of her powers was to come. Time, which like desert sands has effaced the footprints of so many promising authors, has with her served as the desert wind to blow aside those dusts of the commonplace which for a while concealed her true proportions. She is loved more than she ever hoped to be, and far more widely known. Mrs. Ritchie tells somewhere an anecdote of a party of 7 assembled at a dinner-table, where the question arose of the locality of one of Miss Austen's places, Maple Grove, the residence of Mr. Suckling, if we are not mistaken, and 6 of the persons present at once recognized the allusion, and had a formed opinion on the subject. The 7th was a Frenchman who did not read English. Scott, Macaulay, Sir James Mackintosh, Miss Martineau, Mrs. Ritchie, Miss Mitford, and a host of others have vied in their generous tributes of admiration. But most striking of all, to our thinking, is that paid to Miss Austen by Lord Tennyson, when, in some visit to Lyme not many years since, those with him pointed out this and the other feature of the place, only to be interrupted with, "Never mind all that. Show me the exact spot where Louisa Musgrove fell." Could non-historical verisimilitude go farther, or mean more? S.C.W. Newport, June 1892. End of Preface.